Ever wondered if Persia truly vanished from the annals of history? What if, instead, it simply adopted a new moniker? Why would a nation steeped in millennia of tradition choose to erase its very identity on the global stage, particularly in the heart of the 20th century? Today, our journey will traverse through magnificent empires, witness brutal invasions, and dissect the pivotal decisions that, quite literally, rewrote the collective memory of an entire people. This isn't merely a historical account of a country. It's a compelling narrative of how power dynamics, religious fervor, and carefully crafted public image can fundamentally alter the trajectory of an entire civilization. So, settle in and prepare yourself, because the revelations that await you extend far beyond a mere change of name. But before we embark on this fascinating exploration, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting us know which other forgotten civilizations pique your curiosity. Which lost worlds would you like us to unearth next? Let's delve in. Imagine, if you will, a land cradled by imposing mountain ranges, parched deserts, and ancient trade routes. Pathways along which not only merchandise flowed, but also the very lifeblood of identity, of power, and enduring legacy. This land is the Iranian plateau, a strategic region that, for thousands of years, has served as the cradle of civilizations. But how did it all begin? And who were the architects, the true masterminds, of what we now know as Iran? To truly grasp this, we must journey back to the second millennium BC, a time of transformative migrations and burgeoning empires, and it was then that the Indo-Iranian peoples arrived. A nomadic group speaking languages of the Indo-European family, distant linguistic relatives of those who, centuries later, would speak Latin, Greek, and even Portuguese and Spanish. Their language bore no resemblance to Arabic, a common misconception many hold today. Indeed, in Old Persian, Madar signified mother, and Padar meant father, echoes that resonate even today in Latin as ma and pater. These weren't just sounds. They were the linguistic roots of a distinct, deeply ingrained and ancient culture. Among these peoples, two groups emerged as particularly prominent: the Medes and the Persians. The Medes established themselves in the northwest of present-day Iran. They were a powerful, well-organized force and rapidly established dominance. The Persians, in contrast, settled further south in a region known as Pars, the very origin of the name Persia. While the land was fertile and strategically advantageous, the Persians were not initially a particularly powerful force. No one could have foreseen that this seemingly unremarkable group would ultimately reshape the course of history forever. At that time, Persian was simply a limited geographical designation. It didn't represent the entire region, let alone an entire civilization. The Medes held the true center of power. They founded the first significant empire in that part of the world, long before the name Persia would echo in foreign courts or be etched into the pages of history books. But the tides were about to turn. Amidst those rugged mountains and sweeping plains, a man would be born whose ambition would shatter the foundations of the past. A leader who saw beyond divided tribes and dared to dream of unprecedented unity. His name was Courage, or, as the world would come to know him, Cyrus the Great. With Cyrus began the era of the first empire that dared to conquer not only lands, but hearts and minds. Before Alexander, before Napoleon, before Genghis Khan even dreamt of global conquest, there was Cyrus, who not only did it first, but did it differently. While the empires of the ancient Near East typically imposed their rule through brute force, destruction, and exile, Cyrus the Great built his empire on a revolutionary idea: governing through respect. After defeating the Medes, Cyrus went further than simply unifying peoples. He founded the Achaemenid Empire, a sophisticated political machine that, instead of sowing fear, cultivated loyalty. Rather than imposing a single language or religion, he protected the temples of the conquered, respected their gods, and allowed their unique cultures to flourish. For the Jews exiled in Babylon, for instance, he was not an invader, but a liberator. For the Babylonians themselves, he wasn't an enemy, but a restorer, divinely chosen by Marduk. Cyrus didn't proclaim himself the envoy of a Persian god. He cleverly positioned himself as the chosen one of the local deities, and it worked with brutal efficiency. Under Cyrus and his successors, most notably Darius I, the Persian Empire expanded dramatically, stretching from the banks of the Indus River to the shores of the Aegean Sea, and from Egypt to Central Asia. In less than a century, they absorbed the great empires of the ancient world, transforming them into provinces. Egypt, Babylon, names that once dominated history now answered to Persepolis. But their achievements went beyond mere size. This empire developed a vast road network, connecting thousands of miles of territory. They implemented a messaging system as swift as lightning and a bureaucracy that did more than simply control. It administered, recorded, and negotiated. It was a masterpiece of diplomacy, strategy, and pragmatism. Historian Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones, among many others, refers to it without hesitation as the world's first superpower. Yet, the balance between cultural respect and centralized power was a delicate one, like a tightrope stretched across the vast expanse of the empire. All it took was a push or the thrust of a sword to break it. That push came riding from the west, led by an ambitious young man named Alexander. What was about to unfold wasn't simply a war. It was a clash between two fundamentally different worlds. In the year 334 BC, a relatively small but exceptionally disciplined army crossed the Hellespont, heading east. It was led by a young Macedonian king, not yet 30 years old. His name was Alexander, but the world would come to know him as Alexander the Great. His goal wasn't merely to conquer territory. It was to avenge Greece, humiliate Persia, and perhaps, just perhaps, become a legend. And he did. In a series of decisive battles, Granicus, Issus, and finally Gaugamela, the Persian army was crushed. The Achaemenid Empire, which for generations had ruled half the known world, collapsed under the onslaught of a young man with the ambition of a god. But the most surprising aspect wasn't his victory. It was what he did afterwards. Alexander didn't obliterate Persia. He didn't erase it from the map. He admired it, studied it, and, in a way, became it. He married Persian princesses, donned Eastern robes, participated in Zoroastrian rituals, and began proclaiming himself the legitimate successor to the Achaemenid kings. He preserved the Persian bureaucracy and ruled from Persian palaces. For many Greeks, this was unforgivable. Within his army, this Persianization unleashed a storm. Generals and soldiers raised on Hellenic ideals saw his actions as a betrayal. Had they not come to destroy Persia, to liberate Greece from the Eastern yoke? Now their leaders seemed to have succumbed to the allure of Persian luxury, splendor, and spirituality. Internal tensions escalated, and some began to conspire against him. But Alexander possessed a broader vision. He understood that ruling such a vast empire was not just a matter of military might. It was a matter of symbols, legitimacy, and cultural fusion. He sought to create a universal civilization where East and West could coexist. Perhaps he dreamt of being more than just a Macedonian king. Perhaps he aspired to be eternal. His sudden death in 323 BC, at the young age of 32, left that dream unfinished. With no clear successor, his empire was divided amongst his generals. The so-called Diadochi, the central region of the former Persian Empire, fell into the hands of the Seleucids, descendants of Seleucus, one of Alexander's commanders. But Persia, as an idea, didn't vanish. It simply lay dormant, awaiting its reawakening. And soon, new dynasties would emerge, claiming the legacy of the ancient kings for themselves. When Alexander died, his empire fractured rapidly, like a shattered mirror. Yet, within the scattered pieces, Persia remained alive. Under Seleucid rule, and later under the Parthians, the ancient Persian region never ceased to be coveted. Though kings changed, the cultural heart of the territory continued to beat strongly. It was only a matter of time before new Persians would reclaim their throne. Thus arose the Sasanian dynasty, a dynasty born in the very region where it had all begun, Fars. They claimed direct descent from the Achaemenids and proudly revived many of their traditions. Under their rule, Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion centered on the god Ahura Mazda, was reaffirmed as the state faith. Temples rose again, culture flourished, and Persia once more became an empire worthy of fear. But no power endures forever. In the 7th century, a new force was emerging from the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. And it didn't arrive as a guest, it came as a conqueror. Within decades, Arab armies defeated the Sasanids and seized control of the former Persian Empire. With them came new beliefs, a new language, and a new political order. Zoroastrianism was gradually displaced by Islam. Arabic became the administrative and religious language, and Persian began to absorb its influence, adopting words, styles, and structures. Yet, the Persian soul didn't disappear. It endured in its poetry, in its sciences, in its art, and even in the way it embraced the new without entirely abandoning the old. In the centuries that followed, the region passed through Turkish, Mongol, and various local Persian dynasties. The Buyids even came to control Baghdad, the very heart of the Caliphate. Then came the Seljuks, the Mongols of Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, and various Turkmen states, who fiercely fought over every inch of territory. It was a chaotic chessboard where power constantly changed hands. Yet, amidst that whirlwind of wars and conquests, something began to solidify. A Persian identity that, though Muslim, had distinguished itself from the Arab world. That distinction would grow stronger under a new dynasty that would not only restore political unity, but leave an indelible religious mark. Amidst the chaos of small dynasties and regional wars, a force emerged that would forever transform the political and religious landscape of the region, the Safavid dynasty. They weren't just another lineage hungry for power. They had a clear vision to unify the territory under a distinct banner, that of Shia Islam. Until then, the Islam practiced in the region had been predominantly Sunni, as in most of the Islamic world. But the Safavids decided to impose Twelver Shi'ism as the official religion. It wasn't a smooth transition. They enforced it through persecution, reforms, and deep social restructuring. Yet, in doing so, they planted the seed of what would distinguish Iran from the rest of the Islamic world to this day. The Safavid dynasty did more than just mark a religious turning point. It was also crucial in the rebirth of Persian identity, this time integrated with Islam. They promoted architecture, poetry, philosophy, medicine, and science, but under a new banner, in a renewed language, and with a worldview that blended imperial legacy with Shia spirituality. It was a new Persia with a different face. And with that new face, the term Iran began to reappear with greater frequency. Derived from Arianum, meaning land of the Aryans, or land of the nobles, the name had deep ancient roots. But until then, it had been used more within the country than abroad. In contrast, Persia, now which originally referred only to a province, Fars, was the name by which foreigners had known the country since the time of the Greeks. Thus, while the Safavids consolidated their control, and later dynasties, such as the Qajars, kept the structure of the state alive, an identity duality was taking shape. Persia for the outside world, Iran for the Iranians themselves. An ambiguity that was neither accidental nor permanent. Because in the 20th century, with the arrival of a new monarch determined to modernize and westernize the country, that duality would be resolved, not through battles or treaties, but through a simple letter sent to every embassy in the world. For centuries, the world had known this ancient land as Persia. It was a name that evoked glorious empires, fine carpets, mystical poetry, and advanced science. But for many in the West, Persia also represented the exotic, the distant, the decadent, a legacy of Greek narratives that portrayed it as a civilization of excessive luxury, tyranny, and moral corruption. It was within this context, already deeply entrenched in the 20th century, that Reza Shah Pahlavi, the Iranian monarch at the time with strong modernization ambitions, made a decision as symbolic as it was strategic. In 1935, he sent a diplomatic circular to all foreign embassies, requesting that from that point forward, his country be called by its endogenous name, Iran. Why did he do it? It wasn't simply a matter of linguistic preference. It was an attempt to break away from the Orientalist vision that the West held of Persia, a label burdened with colonial connotations. By adopting Iran, a name that in Persian means land of the Aryans or land of the nobles, the country sought to project a new image, stronger, modern, and sovereign. A move of symbolic diplomacy, but not without controversy. Within the country, many intellectuals and citizens saw the decision as a betrayal. For them, Persia represented a glorious past. The Achaemenids, Darius, Cyrus, literature, medicine, the greatness of an empire that challenged the world. Abandoning that name felt to some like severing a legacy thousands of years old. But the decision stood. Iran would be the official name, and so it would appear in books, newspapers, and international treaties. Yet, history didn't end there. In 1979, after a revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini, the monarchy was overthrown, and the Islamic Republic of Iran was established. Relations with the West collapsed. Shi'ism became even more central, and the global perception of the country changed dramatically. Today, Iran evokes for many images of geopolitical tensions, sanctions, conflict, and fundamentalism. Meanwhile, Persia, ironically, has regained a romantic aura associated with lost grandeur, refined culture, and an almost mythical past. Two names, one land, and a constant struggle to decide how it will be remembered. Because sometimes a simple name hides a silent war between what we were, what we are, and what the world wants to see in us. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video and are passionate about this kind of content, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos and can discover more fascinating stories. See you in the next video.